Was Mr. Who's the Boss actually right when it comes to Samsung and Xiaomi? Hey guys, Tech Flash here, and today I'm going to run a bit off course and talk about why Samsung may or may not be slowly disappearing and becoming irrelevant when it comes to the smartphone market. In fact, many people are speculating that the reason Samsung is shifting its focus on the Fold series is that they know that they are one of the first major phone manufacturers to master this technology, and it will in some way or another be a savior for them. Now, a few days back, Mr. Who's the Boss did a similar video on why Samsung is losing to Xiaomi, and this video is a little bit based on that, but with added thoughts on some of the points that he made and why I actually think that Samsung may not be as in much trouble as we may think. One of the points made in Mr. Who's the Boss video was that Xiaomi provided a lot of value for money, and I do agree with that. This is no hidden fact. Chinese cell phones are pretty cheap and budget friendly. If we compare, you would very easily be capable of finding a mid-range Xiaomi phone for around $200 to $300, whereas a phone from Samsung with the same specs would start at no less than $600 to $700. And it's not that you will have to compromise for something when you're buying a cheaper phone. The performance of the Xiaomi phones is equally good and sometimes even better. And that's not only it. When it comes to reselling the phones, Xiaomi keeps its value because the prices are already low to start with. If you buy a $500 phone from Samsung and buy a $300 phone from Xiaomi, chances are that the Samsung device would have easily lost half its value, whereas Xiaomi would still retain more than half of its price. This is especially important in Asian countries like China and India. First of all, the population is a big contributor to more sales in those regions, but most importantly, value for money is something that is actually taken very seriously. This is one of the main reasons why you'll see most of us Americans with iPhones and not Chinese phones. Although one very important thing to keep in mind here is that Samsung's profit margins are way more than Xiaomi, but what a lot of people don't realize is the trick that Xiaomi has up its sleeve, which is sub-branding. By having sub-brands like Poco, Black Shark, and Redmi, Xiaomi is able to basically release budget phones which are almost equally as good as their more expensive models, but at the same time also have a high-end spec phone with a higher price available while still using the Xiaomi name. Comparing this to Samsung, if they start making their budget phones as good as their flagship or mid-range phones, Samsung will literally just eat itself in terms of sales and no one will buy the more expensive models. But what a lot of people don't know is that Samsung already began working on something similar with the M series phones, which are similar to the A series but with a couple of changes. The M series is an online lineup for budget-friendly Samsung phones. First of all, they have started to focus on their online platform, which is something that I'll discuss in more detail in my next point. And the M series is basically a way for Samsung to get itself into the sub-branding lineup. Another big reason is that Samsung simply does not know how to conduct business. And this may sound a little bit weird considering that they've been in the market for so long. But if we look at the efficiency of how both Samsung and Xiaomi are working, Xiaomi very early on figured out the importance of being digital and didn't even bother opening physical stores in every mall they could find. This led them into saving a ton of money and in the long run being more efficient. Even if Xiaomi has physical stores available, they're mostly for products that need a physical demonstration. For example, their lifestyle products which may include an air fryer or a scooter. To put things into perspective, Xiaomi is managing to beat Samsung in terms of sale by just a fraction of the number of full-time employees that Samsung has, which is 20,000 compared to 300,000. But as I made my point earlier with the M series, Samsung may actually have started to realize where they are missing out and make implementations to become more efficient. Online shopping is a big contributor to making people more aware of other brands apart from Samsung and Apple. Especially with the pandemic going around, most people have turned to buying things online. When you're buying a phone online, it's no longer about the aesthetics and the look and feel, but more about the specs and what gives you better value. There's just something about a phone being displayed in comparison to other phones on a website. It's all under one page, all the specs are displayed side by side. Another point that was made in the video was about the ecosystem that Xiaomi has in place for its products. The code that Xiaomi was able to crack was that they penetrated themselves into a ton of everyday and lifestyle products from scooters to Roombas to weight scales and even luggage. By doing this, Xiaomi has very easily made an entry point into people's lives with these products, and this is a very clever way of increasing your popularity and recognition. Or is it? If we take a closer look, a lot of people may remember that early on, Samsung was actually one of the major companies that was well known for the lifestyle products like washing machines, cameras, even before smartphones. In fact, it wasn't until 2009 that we saw Samsung introduce its first smartphone. That's just 2 years before Xiaomi's first smartphone was debuted in 2011. So that's not really a very big gap. And yes, Samsung may not have a hairdryer or a plant monitor or a Roomba, but how hard is it for them to actually make these changes if they need to in order to save their company? One very important thing to mention here is that Xiaomi has an unfair advantage when it comes to rules and regulations. Xiaomi hasn't even touched the US market, which is another point made by Mr. Who's the Boss, and in my opinion, this is an unfair advantage for Xiaomi. Samsung, being far more of a global brand as compared to Xiaomi, has to adhere to a lot of regulations when it comes to advertising, selling, and introducing its products, especially in the US. On the other hand, Xiaomi doesn't have to go through any of this. Xiaomi is famously good with guerrilla marketing, where they just want to market their products regardless of how it's being done. Another big advantage is that their supply chain purely depends on the factor of who buys more, which is not the same case for Samsung. Xiaomi is more open to gray channel suppliers, which means that they don't really care who sells their devices as long as they're being sold. I can almost guarantee that if Xiaomi is to officially introduce themselves into the US, they also at the end of the day would need to follow the same set of regulations that Samsung does. In fact, one of the reasons in a lot of people's opinion is that Xiaomi is not introducing itself into the US market on purpose, because they are well aware that they would not be able to move as freely as they currently are right now, or even worse, that the US will impose sanctions on them just like they did on Huawei. Last but not least, Samsung, although is now at this point mostly known for being a cell phone giant, a lot of people either don't know or are forgetting that Samsung also builds a lot of components that they themselves use and also are being used in a lot of other phones. For example, some Xiaomi and OnePlus phones actually use Samsung's camera sensors. And as I had mentioned at the beginning of the video, Samsung is one of the first major phone manufacturers that has come up with the folding display. If Xiaomi or any other Chinese phone manufacturers are to come up with a foldable device, there's a pretty big chance that they would borrow that technology from Samsung and use Samsung's display panels for their devices. So at the end of the day, it may be Samsung that's taking the win after all. Anyways guys, those are my thoughts on Samsung and Xiaomi, and honestly it's an open discussion. Things at the moment can go either way, and we still have a lot to see from both companies. Only time will actually tell what fate lies ahead for them. Let me know guys what you think about this. Do you feel like Samsung is losing its grip, or is it just an illusion? Feel free to drop your thoughts down below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already for more tech related news, updates, and much more. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.